the record. Why not? On the Patreon record. Hi, Patreon. Um, I was
Hello.
wondering how deep into apes you are, because Mark and I think every episode this is new for us because we were slightly too young to catch this on TV, and by the '80s they
Yeah.
weren't really showing this. I think they'd stopped showing the telemovies by the '80s. So
Yeah, yeah. I hadn't yeah, I didn't see this in first run. Definitely I'm too young for that too, but and it wasn't really being syndicated, but I was aware of the show just like from back issues of Starlog and because the toys were out there and it had to be explained
mm.
to me like, oh no, the toys have the characters from the TV show, not from the movie. Um so that was my general level of awareness. And then I had watched the DVD set back when it came out, like, I mean, back when we were doing DVD Geeks, like 2005, 6, 7, somewhere around there, but hadn't really done a deep dive. So it's been a while. This is pretty fresh to me.
Yeah, when the show came on DVD, like, I only have so much funds to buy stuff, and it just the reviews were like, it's okay, it's not the best, which I guess is
Yeah.
true. And then that's when that's when the Star Trek DVDs were coming out. So those big
Yeah.
clamshell
Yeah.
original
Yeah.
series ones, which are still the ones I have actually, because I like watching the
Right.
60s effects. I
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
bought the steel books, and then Norm was like, "Ah, the steel books are all beat up." I'm like, "Okay, maybe I'll wait." And
Yeah.
oh, SCTV, that's when they were putting out those later season SCTV sets. So,
Oh, yeah. Oh my
and
God.
this is where I learned about the ephemeral, being careful, the ephemeral nature of YouTube, because for the past 5 years there'd been a channel that had every
Hmm.
like the first couple years of SCTV, like the ones they didn't fully put on DVD.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They were like taped off of West Palm Beach, Florida. Like some of them still had the adverts in them and
Wow.
stuff. Good
Ah,
quality,
sounds,
every episode of
yeah.
the first 3 or 4 seasons, and then about a month
Yeah.
ago, just poof, they're gone. So I was like, I
Wow.
should have
Weird.
ripped them. Next time I see something like that, maybe
Uh,
I'll do that.
oh, well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mark, did you ever do a SCTV thing?
I very casually watched a bunch of it, like in the pantheon of sketch comedy. That's something I watched. I guess a lot. I think it came on Comedy Central back in the day,
Hmm.
right?
That
I
sounds
kind of
right.
watched a
Yeah.
lot of it then.
Maybe I
So
taped it all grainy off of Atlanta's Channel 69.
I don't
Grainy,
think it.
even though the
Yeah.
station was like 4 blocks from my house.
No, that station just didn't come in. I think the bandwidth. I think that's how UHF used to work. Was the higher channels just were weaker, right?
Yeah,
Like that's because it was just never. Channel 17 was easy to watch, and then you get down to 69, it just was not. Yeah.
yeah. So I watched it all
Um,
grainy for years, but I probably watched that more
yeah.
than I ever did SNL. So
Oh, wow.
Well, there's so much SNL to watch. It's like
Yeah.
I definitely watched every second of SNL from like 1988 through 1996 or something like that, and that's like now 3% of it or something like that. I don't know. That's not right, but yeah, it's I haven't watched all of the 70s run. I haven't watched much of the recent ones, but
I heard
Yeah.
a weird statement recent. Apparently, Steven Spielberg showed up for almost every live taping in the '70s, and he still shows up more often than he doesn't for the tapings.
hmm,
Wow.
interesting.
Huh.
Like he's just fascinated with how it comes together or something, which is
I went a lot in the 90s when I was in college because we at that time you could go sleep in the hallway at 30 Rock Friday night to be first in line Saturday morning when they came in and handed out tickets and you had your choice of dress rehearsal or live. We would always get dressed because same show but with about a half an hour additional content that then they would cut between
mm,
then and the live broadcast. And it was great. I mean, we got to know this same like weird group of people who all, within those same few years had the same idea. And I saw
Neat.
tons of good guests, tons of good bands. Yeah, those were great.
yeah,
I could see why Spielberg would want to go often.
that's a plus
I
of I guess living in
Yeah,
New York.
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
definitely I'm one of those people that I tend to like a lot of the stuff that airs at like 12:45 a.m. So I feel like the cut stuff would be of interest to me. Like I
Yeah,
think that I would
yeah.
like a lot of the stuff I don't know. I listen to like a lot of Conan O'Brien's podcasts, and every once in a while he'll describe something that was cut, and I'm like, I kind of wanted to see that.
Yeah, right.
You
I
know?
feel like
Right.
the gold standard of the weird 12:45 slot is that I think it's relatively still well known is that late 90s 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea sketch. Does anyone know what I'm
Oh, I
talking
love that.
about?
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
I
like the
Love it.
definition of the last sketch on Saturday Night
Uh-huh.
Live.
Yes.
I can't think. I love that movie. Like it was one of my favorite movies as a kid, but I still cannot separate it from like Phil Hartman screaming, "We're going 20,000 leagues." It's like, how deep are we going? 20,000? No, no, we're not going 20,000 leagues deep. We'll be.
Oh
That's so
God.
good.
Yeah.
And then the ride, there's a 20,000 Leagues. There is a pretty good virtual version on the internet because there is no good footage of it since it closed in like 94 or 95. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's an interesting 3D
But
one.
the VR version I've got, I haven't used it in a while because I had our old Oculus system from here at the office, took that home, but then I downloaded that 3D version, the VR version. It honestly was really good. It was like a little bit clunky to navigate, but it was so detailed and timed perfectly. So if you just kind of like sat back and watched, like it was exact. It was awesome. And it kind of I got rid of that Oculus, but it kind of made me want to get a newer Meta Quest just so I could try that again, see if it's any better.
We still haven't properly VR'd. They had a few setups in
Yeah.
the Japanese stores, but it didn't really seem like either, even in Japan they get beat up because they're VR sets or just
Yeah,
they
yeah.
didn't seem to be like fully functioning. So the best, well, Mark and I went to Disney
I,
Quest back when that existed and did really crappy
Yes.
90s VR. And
Yeah, I
I
hey,
remember it well. Yeah.
I got the early Oculus during the pandemic just to, because I need to get out and I can't
Yeah.
get out. So,
Yeah.
but I've spent most of my time playing Beat Saber, which I've got really addicted to, and I have done a couple of other things. Like there's a game called Gorn. You familiar with
Hmm.
Gorn, John?
No, I don't know it.
Um, it's basically you're in a pit and there's an emperor. He's like fight for, and then guys are just walking at you and you just beat them to death, and their arms will come off and you can grab their arm and beat them to death with their own arms, and they're
Oh
all
my
just like,
God.
oh, not related to the Star Trek Gorn, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
right. Figured
very
that. Yeah.
silly. It's a fun,
Oh,
silly
good.
game. There are a few things like that. They're just weird and ridiculous, but then sometimes you just accidentally hit your table or something. But
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Maybe a real world injury from a virtual game. Yeah,
yeah, thankfully I've not hurt myself too badly from any of that stuff.
you're good.
But yeah, I haven't even gotten around to doing the any of the ride stuff. Every once in a while, I'll go on Google Earth and then go use Google Earth to visit somewhere that I've been before, and it makes me kind of tear up. And then I have to close it.
Sure. Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
it's too much, man.
I
Sometimes.
hear you. Yeah.
But
no, I feel,
anyway,
yeah. Uh, I guess we should jump on into this. So maybe we do the 5 second delay and bop in. Mark was saying he'll do the summary later and I will plug it in later. But
Cool.
as
yeah, I had a little bit of trouble with details, and also it was hard looking up a couple of the personnel, so I ran out of time. And yeah, usually I just crib a bunch of stuff from online stuff, and then it's not.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't accurate. So then by the time I was back and forth a few times, I was like, up out of time.
with that in mind, I'm
No
going to bring
problem.
up the Apes Wiki just so I don't mix it up with the trap. So,
Yeah, that
which
is
goes, well, I bet Mark will get into it in the trivia, but the reason the production looks so high in this is MGM was tearing down their backlot at the time. So they were able to film two
Ah,
episodes on their half torn down backlot to make it look nice and apocalyptic.
there we go. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Mm.
Welcome to Podcast 1999, the podcast about Planet of the Apes and the traps within
Nope.
them.
Nope. We got past the trap. It's time for your legacy. The
It's time
legacy
for
is
the
here.
legacy of the traps.
Yeah, that sounds more like some recent album, like hip hop album, trap album. Yeah. But we did all the trap jokes a few weeks ago. Although I guess we're covering a little bit of the same ground with the legacy this week as we are. Well, now we're in Oakland. 2 weeks ago we were in San Francisco, right?
Well, they're pretty close.
Yeah, but nobody seems to remember being in San Francisco in this episode. They're like, oh my God, it's a city. When did we see a city?
Well,
2 weeks ago you saw a city.
now I think now it's kind of canon that Oakland just became way more futuristic than San Francisco did, which is very funny somehow.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, let's get rolling with this. Who are we?
Hi, Mark.
I am Matt, and coming back, but for the first time for the Apes TV show, it's Mission Logs. John Champion, welcome to this weird corner of fandom.
Triumphant return for the very first time.
That's
Yes.
right. But
Happy to
yeah,
be here.
we were talking a little bit
California.
before we were really rolling that you have maybe seen most of these one time on the DVD.
Yeah, back when we were doing DVD Geeks, and it just felt like there was a lot of Apes releases in those years, 2006, 2007, around there. Had all of that. Definitely got the weird, wonderful cartoon series as well. And with the TV series, I didn't sit down and I didn't marathon all 14 of them. I just kind of got it in bits and pieces, but I was well aware of the Planet of the Apes TV series just from my general fandom, from having a large stash of back issues of Starlog, talking to other fans, definitely being Amigo action figure fan. I pretty much knew the lore of the Apes TV series, even though I had missed it the first time around.
Yeah, and we came into this a little bit worried. I mean, we have heard the animated one's good, so we are looking forward to that. But we are like, are we
Yeah.
committing ourselves to 3 to 4 months of hot garbage, which was our worry? Because once you start, you can't really stop. So
Yeah,
far,
yeah.
I think we're doing okay here. Nothing has made me facepalm myself too hard. Mark, you can
Yeah,
agree or disagree on that.
this has been a highlight of my weeks for the last 5 weeks. It's nice to watch these, once a week. They're great. I'm enjoying them.
It does seem
There's
to be like a anti-Star Trek thing where like the odd ones are better so far.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
it might just be the nostalgia talking, but there is something nice about this 70s period of sci-fi where sci-fi still wasn't really well respected by the general TV audience or the networks that made the shows, but in a post Star Trek era, pre Star Wars, but you definitely had some hits in there. You had some interesting experimental shows like the Logan's Run TV series, and then later on Galactica and Buck Rogers, Space 1999 coming over from the UK, even, Doctor Who coming over and airing on our PBS back in those days. Um, Even if a show like this isn't great, it isn't mind blowing, like, wow, they've, reinvented TV the way that every sci-fi show tries to do now. There's something just really like pleasant and comfortable. You can tell they're wrestling with some interesting ideas, and they're doing it on a low budget. Like there's nothing, even if it's like not a great episode of a TV show, there's nothing about it that makes me, you know, make me want to throw my drink at the screen or anything like that.
yeah, I'm enjoying how every one of these episodes has thrown out uh, two or three things to really think about. And I mean, yeah, we love Space 1999. We did a show on it. That show didn't always throw out two or three things to think about in an episode. So
Right.
it's nice to have a couple of things and just give them a little bit of space.
Yeah, I mean, murdering
Yeah.
space creatures is not something that probably pertains to your personal life, but racism, fascism, those things,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
those
yeah,
well, for
Yeah.
yeah.
better or for worse, those things are still around.
Well, yeah, because
And sci-fi has to deal with it if it's
we're
going to be
right
good
there.
sci-fi.
Yeah, we're right there in the period where a lot of high concept sci-fi films were very, very cranial, and this takes like a little of that and just kind of sprinkles it on a nice, cozy, like rhythmic TV series. You know,
Hmm.
the walking from one city to the next deal,
Yep.
which yeah, I'm
Or
enjoying it so
village.
far. Or
Uh,
village or Oakland
Mark,
Castle.
give us a bit of that trivia because I know we're going
Okay.
to be talking about at least three things just on the trivia, not philosophically for this one.
Okay. This episode is fourth in production order, but the fifth episode aired. Our director this week is Bernard McEvedy. Okay. Mceveety. McEvedy. That's a tough one, man. He was born in 1924 in New Rochelle, New York, and was mostly TV director, cutting his teeth on mostly Western themed shows in the 60s, and then moving on to episodes of many series we know and love, such as Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Knight Rider, and Airwolf. He retired in the late 80s and passed away in 2004, but we'll be back for one more episode of this series. The main writing credit goes to Robert Hamner. Born in 1923, he worked as both a writer and producer and was the creator of the 1970s series SWAT. But listeners of this podcast would be interested to know that he wrote this classic Star Trek episode, A Taste of Armageddon, yeah, computers, as well as 5 episodes of Lost in Space and episodes of Mission Impossible and Fantasy Island, as well as several other classic series. This is, however, the only episode of Planet of the Apes that he wrote. If the castle where the humans are imprisoned seems familiar, then it should be... So, wow, I wrote that badly. If the castle where the humans are imprisoned seems familiar, then it should be. It's the same castle that was used in 1974's Young Frankenstein. And the set with the ruins of Oakland was also used for the Charlton Heston disaster movie Earthquake. I'm not sure if it was the exact same set as used in The Trap, but, you know, it was probably part of that whole demolishing a bunch
Yes,
of
the
things.
MGM thing. So if they weren't on one, I think they did use the same streets. I imagine they shot these kind of back to back. Is episode 4 shot The Trap? Oh no, this is 4. So maybe The Trap is 5.
It's
You
like,
said it a few weeks ago.
I'm getting information like some of those details were provided by like one of the actors. So it's a little, you know, word of mouth because there isn't like an exhaustive history of the series that I know of. And if there is one, then I should probably have it, but I don't. The puppy usually running around in the beginning was a stray and was not in the script. We still don't have an explanation why there are dogs, but presumably this is just a timeline with dogs.
Good dog. He came back.
James and Naughton took him home and adopted him after filming this episode.
Oh.
Anyway, as for our guest stars, though he isn't top billed here, Jackie Earle Haley is probably the most well-known, and he's here as Crake. Born in 1961, he had a few credits before and after this episode, but 1976 is not a few after this episode. A few after this episode, leading up to 1976's Bad News Bears, which really put him on the map, and he went on to appear in 2 of its sequels as well. For many younger people, he was put back on the map by his role as Rorschach in the 2009 film adaptation of Watchmen, and he went on to appear in Shutter Island, Tim Burton's Dark Shadows, the Preacher TV series, and in the second live-action adaptation of The Tick as The Terror. Needless to say, he still had several films come out last year and has several more in pre-production, so he's still at it.
I like how you just left out the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Yep, sure did.
I feel like that was intentional.
Your feelings may be correct. Zena Bethune plays Arn. She is the widow of Tomar, not to be confused with Tolar or Solar. She was born in New York City in 1945, trained as a ballet dancer at a young age, which eventually led to a Broadway debut at age 11 as a singer and dancer, and that later led to a few TV credits. This was her 4th out of 31 total. Tragically, she was killed in a hit-and-run accident in 2012 at the far too young age of 66. John Lormer plays the scientist in The Hologram. He was born in 1906 and had an extremely long and productive TV and film career that spanned from 1950 through the mid-80s. He appears in 4 Twilight Zone episodes, 3 episodes of Star Trek, as well as episodes of The Incredible Hulk, Magnum P.I., and the 1982 classic Creepshow. He passed away in 1986, so if you want him in your film now, you have to fire the projector back up. And that's the trivia I got. There's also a gorilla captain that I don't know.
You can aspire to be a gorilla captain.
I keep not doing trivia on the gorilla captains. There seems to be a gorilla captain in almost every episode.
I don't know. Ever since we had Jason the gorilla, I'm like, nothing else can stand up to that. Like you said, everyone else's name was Tolar and Solar and, Urko. And then there was just Jason the gorilla one week. And yeah, I want Jason back. Maybe he is one of these actors. Every week I'm like, is that him? You know, it's hard to tell
If
with all the gorilla masks.
if the rank is captain, then he could be named anything really. You could just
Right.
assign the name Jason to him. He could be Matthew.
All right, sure. I'd take a Matthew the gorilla.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So, did anybody else look up gorilla familial relations or like gorilla family structures after Urko was like humans have this weakness where they bond with other humans and make families?
I did
Hmm.
not. I mean, I think. Well, I mean, as far as I know about the great apes, I think the bonobo is the only one that just has sort of like recreational sex.
Yeah.
So, but the others, do they pair bond?
They do
Yeah.
they structure in basically harems, which is kind of
Oh,
interesting.
okay.
I look at this, but there's definitely structures. So
Uh-huh.
that's kind of interesting that in this future apes are just like humans are weak because they form is we do kind of think of apes as forming like groups, and that's part of why they're closer to us than
Right, right.
they are to I don't know, non-pack
Yeah,
animals, I guess.
right.
um but
Swarm animals like the bees.
if the leader dies, the other males take the opportunity to mate with the females available and can become the next leader. But in the case of the eastern, oh no, I'm just going into deeper gorilla groups.
No,
um
I hadn't, I did just kind of like gorillas are making a plan. Like there's lots of things. They mentioned Urko's wife like 3 weeks ago, right? 2 weeks ago.
they did Urko has a wife, so I'm like, man, if they got Urko's wife, that would probably be some significant leverage. I guess they've already used that as leverage.
Hmm.
So they're
Yeah.
like, hey, we know his wife's name, so you have to
Maybe
save our
that's why
lives.
Urko's so angry. He doesn't have a harem.
I
There we
think
go. That's it.
he's he's angry because he sees his family as a weakness, so he's projecting, so he's trying to like force the other humans to have a family. So it's like, we'll see how you do when you have a wife, human.
Well, actually, let's talk
I
about
love
the acting a
Urko.
little bit. I mean, I love Roddy McDowall, but I did kind of feel like in this episode in particular, Leonardo was pretty much blowing him out of the water. Because Galen seemed just super whiny in this episode, and Urko was like twice as angry as he was last week.
I'm glad you mentioned that about Roddy McDowall because that's one of the first notes that I took about him, and I hoped that it would change through the episode. My note was jumpy idiot, and that I wanted him to contribute more. Like I wanted him to
Yeah,
just actually have some agency to do something to help, but the whole time he's just sort of bouncing around the two of them, like, well, what do we do now? What's that? Can we get out of here? What, it was like, come on. Roddy McDowall was so good. And granted, this is a very different character from Cornelius, and he's very clear about that. Um, but it seems like if you're going to be part of this triad that makes up the stars of this show, that you would make him a little more, I don't know, a little more relatable, a little more heroic, given a chance. I mean, have you guys seen episodes where he comes across as at least a little more capable?
He does
nope.
seem to have the least agency, but he's a little more thoughtful in the previous episodes. Like he's not just complaining about the situation. He's more like
Okay.
observing like he's
Yeah,
kind of like an observer. It's almost like an embedded military reporter in the military seems to be his role in the earlier episodes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like he is, maybe they're just trying to play him against, just do the opposite of Caesar here, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah.
makes sense. They at least give him a different character, so it's not just, which is interesting that they give us a Zaius that is basically exactly the same as Dr.
Same.
Zaius, but is a different
Yeah.
character. So I don't know if that was McDowell's idea or if they were just like, look, we're gonna, but I don't know. I find him kind of fun, but yeah, it is, yeah, I don't know. He's kind of, maybe if he was too capable, then we wouldn't feel like we needed the humans.
Right.
I
That's
don't
true.
know.
But and both of them are good. Are human leads here, and I really think that James Naughton he's got a lot of presence, and he's just really good to watch. Um, but I also feel like part of the thing here, anytime you do this type of story, whether it's like this or Buck Rogers, whatever, you've got to let your humans, the relatable humans, be the fish out of water. So then it's nice to have the local, the ape character in this case, really be able to be your guide as the audience, and then kind of as proxy through the human characters on the show. So I wanted a little more of that.
Yeah, it's weird that the humans, well, their characters are sort of, I don't know, they kind of waver a little bit. Like I still feel like we don't know them very well because it's sort of like sometimes they when they need to be really capable, they're really capable, and sometimes they're
Yeah,
I do like that they keep giving them things to say that are sort of like colloquialisms and people are just confused. Like,
right.
I don't know what that
Right.
means. He
Yeah.
tries to describe that castle and she's like, I don't know what any of that means. She says something like oil baron money. It's like, no, these people have no idea what that means. That means nothing.
Well, even at the end here, where we the big reveal is that the scientific knowledge in Oakland is stored by Track 4 at the railway station. Zaius knows what the railway station is. Like,
Yeah.
how would you know? How would those words have any meaning to you at all?
He doesn't sound 100% when he's more like, I think it's that very long building, you know? I mean,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
does
the
know, but
long building. Yeah. But like how would you then know what a track 4 is? Like is the is the numeral 4 the same for you? I guess it would be. I mean, they all speak English, even the humans. Everybody
Mhm.
speaks English all the time. But it seemed like a pretty big jump, that they would
Yep.
specifically go to that building and know how to get to track 4. Which, by the way, I do think that there's a flaw in this whole plan about saving the world's scientific knowledge, which is the computer that tells you where the stuff is incredibly well protected. Like I loved they're pulling down the rubble, they're open up that vault door, you hear the hiss, the vacuum, and then here's this pristine computer. But then the first location, the only location that we know about, is just like, yes, by that railroad track. And from them coming out of it, it's just a door to the street. Just
Yep.
like they would be more likely to just stumble upon that than they would be to find the computer that tells them where that is.
it seems like another missed overarching plot as well, because in the first episode, a little bit in the second episode, there's the magnetic disc from their ship, which seemed like that was
Mhm.
going to be the MacGuffin for the whole show, and they kind of forgot about that by episode
Nope.
3. So, Mark, I feel like your statement of just say it was 2 episodes, not one, but otherwise
Um,
you were on point there.
well,
Um,
yeah, I'm going based on the things the internet tell me. So
yeah,
yeah, they said that it was dropped, and it was, but it was
yes.
just I was starting to doubt that.
And it could easily
Um,
become their mission is to start looking for these knowledge points, but that I
that would
don't
be
think we're going to do that either.
that sounds fun. I don't know. Because I've enjoyed the little tastes of the past of the future that we've gotten so far, like the whole
Mhm.
thing where it's like ads for pills with food in them and things like that, and now this like crazy futuristic Oakland from the past.
Now, when
Um,
that one, the computer does look awesome. Although it did, I was like, is
yeah.
that a slot machine from the Twilight Zone at first?
Oh, I thought I
It's
was
kind of
like it
like
looked like
that.
a record player.
Yeah, I thought of that as sort of a jukebox thing. It's sort of like a vending machine too, like it could be anything. Magnificent prop.
Okay, my note is a magical jukebox, but then my next note is Harry Seldon question mark. I guess maybe Robert Hammer is just really into the Foundation, where if you're not familiar, Harry Seldon
Mm.
shows up every 50 years as a hologram or something to because he's predicted the future entirely or whatever in the books. So he's just like, here's what's up, people, even though I've been dead for 200 years. Which there's kind of air to that here. So I felt like the influence was there at least.
Yeah.
So, Jackie Earl Haley. I love it when a series knows that they have this jackpot where they have a child star who's good because this is maybe the third or fourth we've gotten on the series, but you could tell that they know they can give this kid a bunch of stuff.
He's
Um,
good. And I didn't notice his name in the credits when I first watched the show. So I'm about halfway through it. And I'm like, this kid he's really good. And they're giving him a lot to do. Looked him up. And that was a serious holy crap moment. I
yeah,
was not expecting that. By the way, notes on our guest stars here was,
Mhm.
yeah, there was my holy crap moment, Jackie Earl Haley. Also that Zena Bethune, just radiant, just glowing in every scene. So for these humans who are living off the ruins of, a post-apocalyptic version of Oakland, they have great hair, great
Mhm.
skin. They're all doing really well. This is the
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic future we hope for.
Well, except for the not being well
Yeah.
fed part.
Yeah,
Well,
but they look great. So,
Yeah,
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 well, it's
they're
like
yeah,
intermittent fasting. Does
yeah,
good for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
he's just been giving so many secrets to the gorillas. He's got a ton of food and hair
That's it.
products also.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say like one thing I also is I guess at the end there's a little bit of like, oh, he's back in our fold, but he really does like just keep throwing red flags out there and he does all the wrong things, like even up to minute 40 of the episode. He's doing all the wrong things. This kid's terrible. And my notes are like, what do
Yeah.
I have? I have punch the kid. Um, Craig
yeah.
has so many red flags shooting up. And then a few
Yeah.
lines later, so
Uh,
many flags. Just like
but look, it doesn't matter because humans need to bond and form a family so that Urko can use that against them.
There we
Also,
go.
Verdun had a family, so it's almost just like we talked about aliens on Films and Filth and how there was that deleted plot line about how Ripley had a daughter who was died of old age or something, and it was like, did we need did I say Ridley? Ripley? Did we need Ripley to have a family to have like parental instincts? But
Oh, right.
there's always that
Yeah.
connection where it's like, oh well, he had a family, so that means that he has to bond with this family. I kind of feel like anybody can bond with a kid,
Sure. Yeah.
but maybe this kid needs a little something extra, like a guy whose family died 2,000 years ago.
yeah. Well, I teach a lot
Really
of kids.
sad.
I teach a lot of kids, and there's little scamps that I like, and there's little scamps that just annoy me, right? There is a difference.
Yeah.
Craig, and this
Yeah.
is, of course, the acting's great. I
Yeah.
think the writing of the kid's fine, but I'm just like through the whole episode, I'm like, this kid sucks. This is a kid like in my class as a kid. I'm gonna be looking at the schedule, hoping I see him clicked absent,
Right. Right.
See, I didn't feel like that strongly about him, except for, obviously he did objectively bad things. But yeah, I don't know, when I was when I was a child, I definitely remember that some teachers did not like me and some of them did. It's like I had behavioral problems like any other kid.
I mean, that's what kids don't understand in a classroom, at least. Like, it's not like necessarily if you're breaking the rules or not. It's like, are you annoying, teacher?
Yeah, are you pushing teachers' buttons? Do you
Yeah.
have that thing?
Right.
Do you do that thing that you're like, it's like I know what you're doing,
So the
you
kid
know?
that shows up with nothing and builds a working gun of paper and rubber bands in class and causes lots of trouble. Kid seems like a genius. He's fun. He's hard to deal with, but he's fun. The kid that just stands up in the chair and starts singing boop 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 boop. That's not good. Now you're pressing my button.
Mm.
Like, that's not even smart, kid. Get down. Get off the chair. So the character of Craig, which
Yeah.
by the way, isn't that like Irish slang for like the skinny or the gossip? Hey, here's the Craig.
Is
Is it
it?
really?
I think
I didn't know
so.
that.
I was listening to like a podcast out of Ireland and they kept saying it. So yeah.
Oh,
So maybe the writers of Planet of the Apes did not know
wait.
that either, but
Sorry. Is there a podcast you can recommend to me about Ireland?
no, I was just hearing Irish people on a
Oh.
podcast and they were like kind
Oh.
of
Oh,
doing that.
okay.
So yeah.
I'm just curious. I never heard of like a podcast about Ireland before.
Oh no, I was not listening to a podcast about Ireland. I want to make sure I got this right doing the vamp here as I look for the term. Crake.
Um,
Okay, it is spelled the same as this
Hmm.
kid.
Wow. Wow.
Oh wait, no, it's spelled
okay.
with C's instead of K.
Ah.
Let's see.
Um,
Craig, pronounced crack. Craig is Irish slang that means fun, a good time, or enjoyable conversation. Essentially
Huh.
asking what's happening or how are you. So what's the Craig, guys?
okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's a connection there.
I also thought it was Craig for the first 10 minutes till I realized it was Craig.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I did too. And I was like, that is just a super conventional name to give this kid. 2,000 years in the future living in post-apocalyptic Oakland? Like, do they walk by a sign or something and that's, another scrap of English that they know? Ah,
We did a
Craig.
few weeks ago.
No.
And we did
Yeah.
again. We did have. Am I imagining Jason the Gazilla, the Godzilla, Jason the Gorilla? Did
No,
I get it wrong? Is his name like a
there
little
was a
different?
Jason. You're
Okay, now
right.
I'm like
There's a
second
Jason.
guessing my own memory on that one now.
But yeah, they're going to find Tomar's brother Derlin at the end of this episode. So yeah, nobody has a normal name in this except for Jason. He's
I
the
met a
only one.
Derlin once. I was working at the
Okay,
whale camp on
sorry, Derlin, if you're listening.
Grand Manan Island, Canada, and all the ladies in the dining hall for the kids were from Newfoundland. They were Newfies, and I remember one of them had a husband named Derlin, and he showed up at a potluck party we had with moose and seal. So I've had
Okay.
moose and seal.
Wow.
The moose was okay, but a little gamey as it was game. The seal was terrible. Don't eat seal.
Huh.
Moose and Seal, the failed early sketches for the Rocky and Bullwinkle show.
Yeah,
Yes.
that
I'm
was
pretty sure
that
we
was
were
the
making
first
those
thing I
jokes at the
thought. I was like,
potluck,
oh,
yes.
moose and a seal.
Moose
No,
and Seal.
Yeah, but the seal is like super like oily. Like I don't
Hmm.
mean not greasy. It was oily. Yeah, okay. Anyway, it
Wow.
wasn't good. It's one of the worst things
Oh,
I've eaten. Where the
hmm.
moose wasn't too bad.
I think yeah,
Yeah.
seal seems like it would be not. That's like more like a dog. That would be like eating a dog, right? I don't know,
I don't know.
right? Like you don't want to eat like an otter or something, right? I don't know.
Yeah, it'd
No.
be like eating an otter or something.
I
Yeah.
I mean, I've said on multiple podcasts I try to eat as many animals as I can. Not just to eat as much meat as I can, but I just want to try all the animals.
Of course.
But if seal is bad, maybe I'll skip it when I.
What's the
'cause I
strangest meat
I
you've
think I
come
have had
across then?
moose. Strangest? I guess technically octopus, but like I love octopus. It's
Oh, we live
very
in
Yeah.
very
Japan,
good.
whatever. That's you
But
They're
can buy a
great.
giant tentacle in the
yeah,
supermarket. So
but
Nice.
now there's a lot of people have talked about how octopus is so smart that it's kind of not
Hmm.
great
mm,
to eat.
yeah, we
So
don't
I
eat the dolphins.
probably won't be eating octopus again unless somebody just plops it down in front of me. But
We
it's weird because you can prepare it in a way where like the little suckers are kind of still on it.
I don't like
Especially there
that.
was like a
Yeah.
Peruvian dish that was like a soup
Mm,
that had tiny octopi floating in it,
right.
and it was
Hmm.
it was good. But I don't remember what it's called. But they're like tiny little guys in there with the suckers. But
John, we gotta bop the food questions down to your Zoom window.
Yeah.
Strangest meat consumed.
Ooh, God, that's tough. I like a lot of the game meats. I mean, bison and venison are pretty common as far as game meats go, but really, I love ostrich because
oh
it,
yeah,
it's yeah, it's foul, and yet it's like a steak. I mean, it's like having a venison steak, and that is awfully good. Haven't done my parents did a trip to Africa a long time ago, and actually, there's a restaurant called The Carnivore where you have just every imaginable weird game meat from Africa that you can possibly think of, and said it was all great. Maybe one day in my life I'll get there. So yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
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 wasn't that kind of the premise of the restaurant at the end of the world, or am I remembering?
yeah. I know. I
I'm
think
thinking
you're
of something
right.
else. Yeah,
Well, the
I
cow
think you're
comes
right.
out and asks, like, which part of me do you want? Don't you want my rump? That sort of thing.
yeah.
Maybe I should go back and buy it. That's at the Don Quixote, the weird knickknack store, and we have in Japan. And they had like magnet puzzles for your refrigerator for it was the yakiniku puzzle and the yakitori puzzle. So one was a cow, and one was a chicken, and it had like little
Cool.
magnet parts for each of the meats, right?
Oh,
Now
I
they
love
were
it.
in kanji, so it wasn't good for English speakers.
Uh,
But yeah, you do the puzzle, and it looked actually quite difficult to get all those pieces and the correct pieces of meat in the correct spot.
that's
So
awesome.
Hmm.
how about their dinner in this one? Their castle cooking. I don't
Yeah,
know how good a shot do we get of that?
yeah. Not really good. I mean, it's just sort of a liquidy stew kind of thing. And then I couldn't even tell what the apes were throwing to Craig. Was it like a vegetable kind of thing? Was it bread? It was just sort of a round white orb-ish shaped thing that he chows down on a couple of times.
I was
I
certainly
thought
thinking
it
of
was a
the Force
potato.
Awakens,
Was
where
it?
Rey's getting paid in, food or whatever and Force Awakens. So it also, I just thought it
Yeah.
was funny that the gorillas apparently carry around little pouches of food to bribe humans with.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were eating on these, giant wooden salad bowls, but you couldn't really tell what they were eating exactly. By the way, I think early in the episode, Roddy McDowell, but yeah, obviously Galen says something about cooking for them, and I thought, this is good because in real life, Roddy McDowell known for throwing a hell of a dinner party, so that
Mm.
was right in line with who he was.
They didn't know what they were saying, ignoring or turning down or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come on, guys. Yeah.
One thing I do think like the both of the main human actors are fun. They're fine. I do notice that they really are having trouble settling exactly who they are as we've worked through these episodes. Like this one really seems to be pushing like Muscle Man Allen. Maybe it's because Mark and I just
Yeah.
watched Hercules in New York, Arnold Schwarzenegger's first film. But as he's
Oh,
like doing the bars and all of that sort of
Yeah.
stuff and opening the
yeah.
door of the computer, they just really seem to be like, I don't know, maybe they were trying to push like the Heston button where Heston runs around, shirtless for most of the first movie.
Maybe.
I thought he was just stepping up and being a dad and like doing dad stuff and bending bars and stuff. I don't know.
He, he had
I read this as a lot of that. Yeah.
he had a lot of time to whittle to make that
Hmm.
airplane. I mean, it was a good model airplane, but I mean, that must have been a lot of downtime for him to whittle that much. So good on him for
Um,
that. But they all I felt like at first, they're very interchangeable to your point, Matthew. I mean, they're kind of they both know how to make a battery. They both kind of come up with the plan at the same time. They both are pretty much always on equal footing. But yeah, Verdon at least gets to shine a little bit here, both from doing the strongman stuff, but he's got this, there is this theme here about not just being the father figure to Craig, but also this theme about trust, obviously in multiple directions between him and the kid, between him and the kid's mother, and of course, our two astronauts separated have to trust each other's work that they're doing separately to get them back together. There's a lot of this kind of dynamic throughout the episode. And I think they're both good. I think James Naughton does have a little more presence. He's got a little more gravitas. There's just something about him that feels a little more real as a person. Um, the thing that kept striking me throughout the episode was, even though this show was, if not the most expensive, one of the most expensive TV shows at the time for the 1974 season, um, you can tell where they cut the corners. So we have the costumes already from the Apes movie. We're going to do really good makeup on a few people, but not everybody. And then we're going to use these magnificent sets that are in a state of disarray, just light the hell out of them so we can just do one setup, for each take. And not really have that many characters on screen at any one given time. So you can tell they're like breaking up the need for the number of actors that they have around, and that affects the pacing of the show. Overall, it's a good episode. It is a good story to tell in this kind of science fiction context. But in the back of my head, I kept thinking, oh man, if only it was now. And if only it was a good, capable network, good, capable streaming service that wanted to do this kind of science fiction, you can actually do it really well and ramp up the pacing a bit, make the sets feel a little more moody and realistic, and do a little deeper dive into the backstory of what's going on here.
I mean, that might be the best way to get like actual monkey suits back on screen because the movies that ship
Mm-hmm.
has sailed. If you're making the movies now, it's got to be like, you know, um, that sort of thing. But
Well, it's like I agree that this if this happened now, we would get something like we find out a little more about Urko's wife. We find out a little more about why do gorillas look down on human family structures. We would get something like if there was a bit in this where Urko went home to his wife and he said something like, oh, I'm trapping the humans in a family, and she's like, oh, do you have a problem with families, do you? That would be really there could be some really good stuff there, and like an intimate show like this where, you know, the I think that splitting the guys up so much, which is what, the second time we've had them split up for most of an episode.
Hmm.
Usually something that would
Gladiators did that.
happen. Oh, so three, third time?
Oh yeah, Trap has okay. I guess that's
Trap
a
was
thing,
what
you
I was
know.
thinking of.
Yeah. Well, you have an A's plot
Um,
and a B plot. That's how you do it. You split them up.
well, that's it. That's pretty interesting because I feel like that's something that would more happen later in a series and not
Mm.
this soon. But still, it's like there's a lot of meat there. Like, it was very interesting to have just Urko trapped with Burke that one time.
I'd like to see Orko in here too. I guess it's like
Yeah, sure.
you always stick
Why not?
Roddy with one of them. You know, one week he's with Burke, next
Hmm.
week he's with Verdon. You know, so
Yeah,
um,
I would like to
And they
see Galen trapped with Urko, but
yeah,
I
and they
think that's
do
coming.
they do make good use though of these one-on-one scenes because there are a lot, again, like to keep the budget kind of under constraint, do a lot of these scenes where it's just one, or well, I should say two, maybe at the most three people in the same room together, but you have a lot of these two shots, a lot of these just one-on-one conversations, and they really make the best of those. Like I think the stuff between Zaius and Urko is great. And then the stuff between Burke and Galen is so. It's a bit repetitive just because we already know their dynamic a bit. But it's good. I mean, anytime you give the actors just a chance, we're going to roll camera, you just do your thing. Like I think they all deliver.
yeah.
I do
It's
wonder
it's
if when
kind
we
of
get
the. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I do wonder if when we get to the end of the show, this actually is going to be my favorite performances from Mark Lenard, you know, which is yeah, you just assume it's
I
going to be
mean,
Star Trek. And then I'm like, man, he's so good in here. He doesn't
Yeah,
have to be
yeah.
Vulcan chill. He's screaming at people. He's throwing them regularly. It's wonderful.
so
Like
good.
like you gotta love Sarek, but yeah, I didn't know. I've never seen him like on this level before, and every time I see him, I just get excited because it's just like, where are they? Ah! Yeah.
It was nice to see Zaius back because we haven't seen the new Zaius. I keep calling him new Zaius in my notes. We haven't seen him since the first episode.
Yeah, the second time. I think he's gonna be back like 6 or 7 more times.
Okay.
But
And yeah, John, just to mention your week to week 70s TV, I did notice that while they were in this town, they were reusing shots. I'm pretty sure some of the establishing shots of the city were the same as 2 weeks ago. That
Right.
sequence with the signaling mirror, that was definitely the same as we got 2 weeks ago. They were
Oh,
just reusing
funny.
that footage.
mm,
So
Wow.
yeah, it's the whole, I don't know, stage play to screen pipeline thing where, two
Hmm.
people in a room that
Yeah.
I mean, that was sort of my entry point to Star Trek: The Next Generation because that was kind of a little more like I felt like that was a little more like stage adjacent than the original series was. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's controversial, but yeah, that was kind of always something I loved about it was it felt kind of like a stage production. And this too, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
nice
one
to get to know these guys.
one more big thing I wanted to go when they're at the computer at the end. One, it's entertaining that knowledge, they just call it knowledge, is coming from a ticker tape of dot matrix printer.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
That's not the
All the
important thing I'm
knowledge
getting
is
to, by
on
the way. That's just
paper.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd looked this up. Did we look this up for something else for this series? I can't remember. We were talking about computer displays. Oh, it was Twilight Zone and it was a chat. So that's never mind. We were talking
Okay.
about the Twilight Zone episode from Agnes with Love. Now I'm diverging way off the path,
Yeah.
but how computers from this era didn't usually have screens, they just did printouts because screens just couldn't refresh fast enough to give you anything useful. So to me, honestly, when the printer was just printing and printing and printing and printing, it was piling up, and you saw some of the guerrilla soldiers kind of freaking out. It did like legitimately give me anxiety. So I was thinking about like the printout going out of control.
I,
Like,
I do
oh
have to
man,
say, about 10 years ago, this is basically because I have a bunch of printed out books. I don't know. That's my apocalypse prepping, just in case
Yeah.
civilization falls apart. I printed out for some reason a bunch of books,
that's
and they're
very
in my
expensive.
closet.
So I actually I was having this conversation on our Patreon with one of our listeners, and it turned into this discussion about encyclopedias. And I said that my dad had always kept a set of the 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica because supposedly that was like the apex of how they collated their knowledge, how they presented their knowledge, and this was very well known that okay, that was the one to have in the event of a you know human meltdown of some sort. That if you had to rebuild society, this was the version that you should use because it's advanced enough to be able to get like industrial machinery back up and running, like how to explain to do things to rebuild a civilization. But it's not like, okay, day one, build a transistor. And that was my worry about Zaius here. He's like, yeah, we got to destroy the knowledge. But I'm like, okay, this thing is printing out a bunch of paper that you have no context for whatsoever. So if that paper that's printing out is like, here's how you build a transistor, okay, to Zaius, to Urko, to anybody there, it's like, great, what do we do with this now? Like, we have no idea what these things do. We know how to make guns, and we know how to embellish our leather outfits, and that's about it. Give us something more complicated than that, we're not going to know.
Yeah, I think
I
1911 is probably about the last point where, you could like know everything, or at least know everything that
Yeah,
humans know. After that, things get so deep. I mean, quantum physics is now about to break out, and now you got to specialize.
yeah. And that's the thing.
yeah.
Having an encyclopedia entry about quantum physics is not going to help you if there's an apocalypse. But knowing how to make, whatever, machines, steam engine, all it, just stuff like to get the gears going, literally and figuratively, to get things going again, you could do it with that.
I'm getting a bit into the weeds here, but there's Skara Brae, I think it's the name. It's one of the very northern Scotland islands,
Hmm.
and there's some ruins there. And one of the theories is that it was kind of like a school for basically to teach agriculture, but it was like metaphysical agriculture, like it wasn't just agriculture steeped in more ancient, mixtures of religion and other things mixed in, but like you would
Yeah,
go
yeah,
through the
yeah.
sequence of rooms and that would teach you the knowledge you need to know to farm.
I I
Very
definitely
cool.
heard someone explain like that the title doctor, when you go a certain you go back far enough and not terribly far, and the title doctor doesn't really mean anything. Like medical
Mm-hmm.
science that's of any
Well, yeah,
use
your barber used to
doesn't
do all
go
the
farther.
medical stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, it was and even now, I mean, don't get me wrong, we don't know a whole lot about the human brain, and we're still everything we're doing with antidepressants is highly
Yeah.
experimental. I'm
Right.
not discounting the help that it gives people because it definitely does, but we're also sometimes experimenting with that stuff means give it to a bunch of people and it doesn't harm them, so then it's safe, and then we run trials. The scientific method, but that doesn't mean that we know how the brain works because we pretty much don't.
Well, it's
Yeah.
like you're mentioning doctor. I mean, it varies from language to language. In Japan, right? There's no Mr. and Mrs. Everybody's just
Hmm.
whatever san. So it doesn't matter
Hmm.
what gender. It's san. And a doctor is called a sensei. The martial arts master is called a sensei. I get called a sensei because I'm in a teaching position. So yes, I do go around the school with people saying Matt Sensei to me, um, which is
I
still
thought
kind
this
of
was going to
exciting
turn
from a
into
Ninja
I was
Turtle
going to
point
turn
of
into
view.
a pronoun story. And I was going to be like,
No, no, no. There are no
yes,
pronouns. That's the whole point. I've
Yeah.
been trying to study Japanese a little harder because I live here, and it is confusing sometimes when you get a sentence and I don't when the translation comes out. I'm saying they're trying to guess or whatever, and then it's like Mrs. Nakayama. It's like I didn't know if it's going to tell me Mr. or Mrs. Nakayama when I translated it, so I had no idea because
Huh.
that's not in the language. You'd have to throw in
Interesting.
the given name, to know really.
but as far as how much people might be able to do with this slight amount of knowledge from this computer, it's I don't know if it's a direct like comparison, if it's worth anything, but anytime that I've seen something on the internet that's something like a mystery whatever AR game or something like that, where ARG, where it's like people on the internet have to put these clues together and it's going to take them a while, then it gets solved in like 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
I would assume that if you have I don't know, 1,000 chimpanzees with typewriters and they have access to this information, then they
And
might
dot
be able to
matrix
get it done
printers.
pretty quickly.
I
Um,
did find it interesting that such that deep thing of like, oh, if I have this knowledge, I can really be in charge. Oh, you can't be in charge. It's dangerous. None of us should have it. And that was like a 15-second conversation, which I'm like, that's some deep stuff there. And they're only
Yeah.
spending 15 seconds on it, which it was nice they acknowledged it because they could in 70s
Yeah.
TV you could skip it entirely, but
And
but
yeah, it's
also,
a good moment because there's no real resolution to their argument. It's just that the resolution is the action to burn the paper,
Mhm.
which, by the way, highly explosive paper because you see it burning, cut to the
Yes,
outside, and that thing is
yes.
just blowing up like an oil tanker. Love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a cool moment because if you stayed on that conversation for half an hour, it would be like, oh, okay, well, you have power now, but you already have guns. Somebody's going to invent a bigger gun, and somebody else is going to have power that doesn't have the same kind of power with the same intention that you've got, Urko. Plus, there's the strong arm power that Urko's got versus the sort of socio-political power that Zaius has got. Like, there is no way to get to a resolution with any of this. It's just two guys who are afraid of losing their current status. That's totally it. And the way they
Yes.
see it is like, okay, well, we just got to walk away, pretend like none of it happened. See ya.
Yeah.
or is it a
They are
sci-fi burning of the
obsessed.
Library of Alexandria, you know?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but I mean, uh, I'm assuming both of you guys have read up on a lot of things like the Manhattan Project, where that stuff from the outside it looks like, well, naturally technology progressed and it progressed, and then eventually we got a huge bomb. But it's like there was just an insane amount of money dumped into this thing, and they didn't know it was going to work. In fact,
Yeah.
there was thought that it might just incinerate the atmosphere and kill all of us when they tested the
Uh-huh.
first one. And
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
really thought, people didn't even think that the one dropped on Hiroshima was going to work. Like they weren't
Yeah.
really sure, and they definitely didn't predict the results.
Well, even
Like
more
I think,
recently, the Hadron Collider, whatever it
Uh-huh.
is, where they were like, "Oh,
yeah,
are they going to make a
I remember
black
that.
hole and consume the Earth with it?" You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember that was in.
If we're lucky.
yeah, yeah. Looking back, maybe they should have just made a black hole.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I
But
it's fun. I'm not going to put it on the camera because I know this is going on YouTube. But one of my credit cards does have a picture of that collider on it
Ooh,
oh
because they are
wow.
like
Right on.
put whatever picture you want, and it's a beautiful thing.
But I'm thinking, that moment, that little discussion about the power of knowledge and the eventual abuse of that power that comes from knowledge, like that really is like the micro version of what Planet of the Apes does as a total series, as a total concept. Because the whole thing is about like, oh, okay, well, humans built weapons that were strong enough to destroy themselves and everything around them. And if you watch Beneath the Planet of the Apes, destroy the entire planet for everybody, and we're done. Except we need to reinvent for a sequel. But other than that,
yeah.
other than that, so I guess I try to take the position that knowledge is simply knowledge, and that is neither a good nor a bad thing. That is a neutral proposition, that there is the knowledge to do something. The knowledge to split an atom exists. Okay, that is a neutral proposition. However, it is the greed, the want for power, it's the prejudice against others, it's the political condition, it's the desire for land, etc., that then perverts that knowledge to be something else. And that's really getting that in the conversation. That's where we end up with the story as a total.
I guess the other thing that really fascinated me about this particular conversation, though brief, is it was between our antagonists. Like usually it's going to
Yeah.
be
Mhm.
between your protagonists. It's going to be Kirk, Spock, and McCoy talking it out, or it's going to be like one protagonist, one antagonist arguing about it. But here it's like,
Yeah.
oh, these are the people who are not. I don't. That's. I guess that's the magic of Zaius. You're never sure how much you're not supposed to like him or like him because he's usually
That's
right.
yeah. Yeah, but that's
I
the
mean,
thing. It's like I have no sympathy for Zaius at all. I think he's a zealot. I think he's paranoid. He will do anything to protect the bit of power that he has, whichever version of Zaius we're talking about, because there are
yeah,
multiple, right? Um, but there is something about him that is so understandable as a villain. You know, we always say the best villains, it's not the mustache twirling villain, it's the guy who is doing the thing that he believes makes him a hero or her a hero. And it's the thing that is totally relatable to you. Like if I were in the same position, I hope that I would make better moral choices. But I can also get like this guy looks at the potential destruction of his entire society if he doesn't do this one thing. If he doesn't get rid of this one bad piece of knowledge, then that's what he's faced with.
yeah, and I would assume that he may have access to some amount of knowledge of the past, but he probably doesn't realize that humans had to work really hard to make a bomb that blew everyone up, and it wasn't
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that it wasn't just like a piece of paper that said how to split the atom, and then you just do it. You know, these things never happen in a vacuum. But it's probably not very fun if you were going to make a series where it's like, oh well, as long as we make sure that we don't spend, $10 billion making a huge project to develop a gorilla bomb, which I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
gorilla bomb would be pretty cool name
That sounds
for
good.
something. Planet of the Apes and the gorilla bomb. Gorilla bomb on the Planet of the Apes. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I think
Yes.
this is starting to become a running segment. We'll make it official where we ask the guests for their long, convoluted Planet of the Apes title if they were making one. You
Oh,
don't have to answer
yeah.
that, but
The Planet of the Apes, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the ape bomb. Yeah.
ooh,
Yes.
okay, there we go.
Awesome.
Nice
Yeah.
inversion there.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but it's like these things don't happen in a vacuum. The Cold War, I've seen many arguments that Japan was going to surrender eventually and the US just dropped the bomb to scare the USSR, which makes perfect sense. And Chernobyl, happened because just say, not enough safety regulations in place and this and that. And if we developed nuclear energy and just put it to work on like power plants that were very carefully monitored in, say 1940 something, and just
Hmm.
continued along that line, we would be living in a really great
Yeah.
situation right now.
Well, more recently
Yeah.
in Japan, Fukushima was working until a earthquake and tsunami decided otherwise.
But what
Yeah.
wasn't it something like they built that on a fault line because it was cheaper?
They did build it by the ocean, which sounds like a bad call. So,
Yeah, it's
uh,
so it's I don't want to blame capitalism for everything, but yeah, that might be a little bit of a blame
Seems like
capitalism
a
for
good
everything.
good opportunity. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
couple questions we like to throw out. We've been keeping our existential dread versus sci-fi fun question for the apes. There seems to be enough dread
Mm,
here, and I'll go first today. For me, this one
yeah.
did have some nice dread, like the conversation we were talking about. Are we watching the Library of Alexandria burned? A nice apocalyptic city. I'll give this one 60% dread, 40% fun. The computer's fun. I mean, I don't think anything here is going to get 100% because once you put people in monkey suits, you have a certain level of assured sci-fi fun, I think. But
Yeah, I'm doing 75 dread
okay.
because you can't trust the kid. You can't trust Urko is running wild. There's definitely like a lot of guerrilla skirmishes, and they basically win at the end. The bad guys technically win at the end of this. I guess the humans get away and they're going to be okay, but it's
That's how
still,
the Empire Strikes Back ends.
it's kind of Empire. It's kind of Empire Strikes Back over here, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not 100% dread. It's yeah, 75% is a good place to land with that. Um, there's something really defeatist about the idea that um, knowledge just is going to be dangerous no matter what. Like
Hmm.
we can't even trust anybody to have it, other than maybe a couple of human astronauts. But even then, if they have all the knowledge in the world, what are they going to do with it? So there's no good answer either. They could just be a couple of human kings presiding over a huge ape society just because we're now enemies. Um, there's a little bit of hope there when we get to the end when the kid and his mom Crake and his mom are hopefully going to have a little bit better life when they were sent off. We assume that, um, but then it's just back to the grind of running away from apes in a post-apocalyptic world. So there's not a whole lot of hope for those guys. Yeah, it's got the right amount of dread.
And also the red flag with the gorilla silhouette, the ape face silhouette on it is
Oh
just
yeah,
the
we haven't seen that yet, have
That
we?
is the
yeah,
symbol
that was
of
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
very dreadsy on that.
Great national flag.
Yep. The Gorilla Republic or whatever it is. Or
We are
Ape Republic.
giving well banana. We're
Banana,
giving
yeah, wait, I was right there. Yeah.
Well, it's right there. We're giving bananas. We did learn seven is often a bunch, so our number does make sense. Just to keep reiterating that. How many bananas would you like to give this episode? Of course, you can answer in any manner you want to. John, I guess we'll go backwards on this one. If you want to give this episode some bananas.
Wait, I would say, is it out of a certain
Out
number?
of seven
Out of
bananas,
seven.
seven
It
is a
is out of
bunch.
seven. It is out of seven. Okay.
All right.
I give this five bananas and a peel. So like five and a half bananas because it's really solid. I think the acting is good. I think the storytelling is good. The premise is really interesting, especially if this show had lasted a bit longer and if they had delved into a little more serialized storytelling, which it's 1974. They're not going to do that. But they're laying the groundwork with some really interesting ideas here. The negatives against it are that, again, you can tell where they're cutting the budget. The pacing suffers from that. They have the opportunity to make this really cinematic, and yet it still feels small, like TV in 1974. So there are some misses among the hits there. But I think overall, like they're actually taking their time to go, hey, this is sci-fi, this is action. We're going to tell this little bit of a personal story with Verdon and Craig, and that's all good stuff. But we're actually going to pause every now and then and just throw out this really heavy idea to the audience. So no question to me that if that story is true, that Gene Roddenberry was called to come in and help save this show at the tail end, but it had already gotten canceled by the time they came to an agreement with them. But this is the kind of thing that could have actually been very Roddenberry in that respect. So it's good. Yeah, it definitely is way above the halfway mark. So we're somewhere between five and six bananas out of seven.
Oh, the other continuity thing, since we're talking 70s TV, I mentioned though it's a city, and they went to one 2 weeks ago. Also,
Yeah.
Galen's like, "What's a coliseum?" And they were like in
Oh,
the ape. It's a small one, but they were in that little ape coliseum in the gladiators, right? And
yeah.
and it turned out that they paired the gladiators with this one as the telefilm, so it would be even more glaring if you were watching them as
Oh,
as one
wow.
thing. I feel like they just
Oh
come
my
from a
gosh.
coliseum, and then he's like, "What's a coliseum?"
Well, yeah, that one was so that one was kind of a Burke episode and this was a Verdon episode. Maybe that's
That
the
might be why they
pairing. I
paired them.
don't
I
know.
just thought that would be funny. But Mark Bananas?
Giving it four bananas, one for the family, one for the scavengers for Galen and Burke, and then two for Zaius and Urko because they demand one banana each.
Sure.
I don't
Can't
Okay.
fight
know.
him on that.
I
Yeah.
didn't think about this very much.
Right. Well, I mean,
Shooting from the hip with four bananas.
you're supposed to. I'm going six bananas, but they're holographic bananas.
Okay.
Which I don't remember I gave the trap. I think, and again, it's not. Maybe it's kind of a quality rating, but it's just a banana rating. We don't quite know. I did think the trap was actually a better episode.
Yeah,
Probably
but the
because of
trap
all that.
was like,
It had all that Mighty Criswell, food and the pill stuff. So that really resonated with me. But this one does have the deeper
okay.
sci-fi concepts and kind of like psychological things going on with the fake family.
Well, and that one had more Urko, like a lot more.
Yeah,
It
this one
had
had some
Urko
good
just,
Urko though. This one had some
yeah,
very
it
good Urko.
does. It does. It's
By the way,
giving America, but
holographic holographic banana, good band name. And I'm going to tie
nice.
that back to an earlier reference where you said metaphysical agriculture. That would be their first album.
There we go.
So we
Nice.
get to go
Hell
full
yeah.
circle with this. Yeah,
Yeah, I got to
Hell
pick out the
yeah.
band names, yes.
yeah, yeah.
I guess we'll wind this one down. John, this is the third week of February if people are listening as of release. So, what's
Right
up with
on.
you?
I think third week of February. Let's see. I think we're coming around to collective on mission logs. So we're right in the middle, or just past the midway point, season 6 of Voyager. So join us over at podcasts.roddenberry.com or find us on socials at Roddenberry Podcasts. We will see you there on, I believe, Blue Sky and on Instagram, all the places. But yeah, podcast.roddenberry.com is the place to find us.
All right.
Nice.
If you're looking for us, do rate and review podcast 1999 where applicable. Hopefully a nice one. Um, we do a lot of
Give us 5
podcasting.
bananas
Give us 5
in the form of
bananas
stars. Yes.
or 7 bananas if you can. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, you'll find all of our media podcasting over at podcastiopodcastius.org, where we talk, or yeah, all of us here talk about the Twilight Zone from time to time. Really good and really bad movies according to IMDb users on Films and Filth, and some video game stuff like Luke Loves Pokemon and the Game Show. So,
Yep. Almost done with Twilight Zone. I mean, the
yep,
first
yep.
series. Where are you going after that?
We're gonna go peeling. We're peeling to peel.
Is this a banana reference?
Mark, this is your plan. I decided to take the Twilight Zone vortex that you came, where it has to be.
Oh,
It's the
yeah.
original Twilight Zone, and then it's Peel, then it's Night Gallery, then it's Whitaker, and
Um,
then the middle of the vortex is the '80s zone.
Yeah, John, my
Wow.
idea was to take a spiral and like impose it over a timeline. So
Okay.
you follow the
Yeah.
spiral.
Wow.
So
That's ambitious. I love it. Yeah.
That's a different
it's Twilight
podcast, of
Zone-y.
course, but yeah, go
Yeah.
dig Time Enough podcast, and for now, yeah, destroy your computers.
Yeah, it's time for the Butlerian Jihad, you cowards. Let's do it.
We'll cut there. Mark, yeah, send me that summary when you can. And John, while
I'll
you're on the line, I'll
have it
tell you
tomorrow.
things that we have in the
Oh,
future.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'll show you what, as we were recording, somebody came down and brought me this
oh yeah, I was
black
curious what that
hoodie.
was going to be.
Yeah, so that, there we go.
PA spot. Oh, SFA. Okay,
SFA. Okay, so here's
Huh.
the back of it.
there we go. Okay, I
Oh,
was
nice.
sitting
Okay.
there working out.
So I just hope the show doesn't suck.
Okay. Cool.
If it's,
Yeah.
you know, if it's anywhere near Section 31, I'm never going to wear it.
I gave up after 30
I-
minutes. I was like,
man.
it's not for me. Don't need to watch
Dude,
it.
no,
I'll skip
no,
it.
it's
I'm-
not for anybody. That's the problem.
I have friends who don't like any Star Trek except Lower Decks, and I'm considering just trying to make them watch Section 31
No,
and just see
don't
what
do it.
happens.
Don't do it.
But yeah, I probably won't. Probably won't work.
Man.
Now, as far as better stuff, we
Yeah.
will be doing Raiders sometime soonish. I know Luke's
Yeah.
out for a few weeks. I don't know what your schedule is, of course, but there's somewhere in the next
March.
month and a half we'll be looking at. Yeah.
Late March, probably. He said he was like gone 2 weeks in March, I think, right?
Yeah, but he didn't say which weeks. But anyway, I'll be getting back to you before that, before too long. If
Okay.
you would like to jump in for, I assume you don't want to jump
Nice.
into Raiders. It's Raiders.
Yeah, yeah. I think,
Yeah, that's Raiders.
I think I've seen Raiders more than I've seen any other movie. Yeah, pretty sure. And I saw it like during its opening week or so out here in LA at the Chinese Theater because I was out here on a trip. My dad had a medical conference. We did not know what this movie was. We just knew that
Wow.
Harrison Ford was in it. And there was a long line of people to get in, so we joined that line to go see it there. So seeing it at the Chinese Theater on my first trip to California was pretty special.
Okay. Yeah. We have to get you in for that
Nice.
then.
Yeah. Yeah.
BC has also been pushing. If you're interested in joining this, he's like, you have to do Zardos. 2025 is the year Zardos takes place, so we will be doing Zardos.
Does it,
sometime
though?
before-
I don't think that's correct.
I'll have to double check. Actually, I know
Really?
we
You
just
didn't
missed
check this?
I usually trust this thing. Let me check that. Last year was the
2293.
oh, that's not bad at
Yeah,
all.
it's okay. I was like,
What was he
I thought it
telling
was
me
like
about?
an anniversary. I mean,
Okay,
last year,
last year
2024 was like the 50th anniversary of it.
maybe his brain
Of the
exploded
movie.
on that one. Okay, yeah, yeah, okay.
Because
Yeah,
we did do
Well,
a week, yeah, we did a
yeah.
week of Zardoz on Sci-Fi
Oh,
5.
so good. I love it. I
okay.
was, I was
Well, now I'm
probably
not as much in a
gonna
rush,
make
but
everyone do it at some point because that movie's
okay. Anyway, it's not a
so
have to do it
wild.
now thing then. I thought we
Yeah.
had to do it now, but we don't have to do it right now. But
But in
yeah,
2093, we could do the
Yeah.
yes,
preemptive,
yes,
200-year
yes.
countdown. Yeah.
Yep.
With our heads in
Okay.
the
Ready.
jars and all that sort of stuff. That'd be
Uh-huh.
Oh, I'm
great.
ready, dude. I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna be alive in 2093. I
Excellent. All right.
120 or whatever. Yeah, let's do
Head in
it.
a
Great.
jar.
Yeah. Put
Yep.
us on. Go ahead and put it in the calendar. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. If it was Reddit, it'd be like exclamation point remind me 200 well boy
Yeah.
80 years or whatever. But still, we could still do it for April Fool's Day. I mean, like why not?
No, I
Oh.
definitely want to do Zardos. Where does
Yeah.
did he tell me a 2025 thing? I don't know. Anyway, if somebody told me that, I definitely would
Yeah.
have been like, even if I see that I wouldn't have looked it up because I wouldn't have wanted to learn the reality as I just did.
Not everything has to be in a sometimes you can just do things just to do them and
That's
that
right.
movie. I can't believe you guys hadn't done that movie before because
It was
really,
always we're about to do it on the Sci-Fi Sanctuary. When we got to Films and Filth, it's no longer like an obvious. Now it has to be like a special thing, right? So, oh, speaking of special things, Mark and I are doing my birthday movie where we do movies not on the list. So,
Okay.
we're doing all that jazz. And
Oh,
when I
God, that's
first brought
awesome.
up my notes for the legacy, I had
Yeah.
it on the wrong page, and the first thing I was like, "Oh, I'll look for a quote from. Oh, here's a quote from the legacy. I can say that." And then I look, and it says, "Generous with your cock is a good one, worth using anytime." I was like, "Wait, that's not for Planet of the Apes."
well, my
Oh
birthday
my
movie is
God.
going to be Highlander 2, which is a film that I saw in the theater.
Ooh, yeah.
Wow.
I feel like
Oh,
at some
holy
point we have
crap,
to do a
dude.
bad movie, like
Yeah.
so I'm like let's just also the very first time I was on a podcast with Luke and Matt we were going to do that next and
Yeah.
it didn't happen.
Well, a
So
lot of people didn't like the Country Bears, which was my choice last year.
I love the Country Bear. I don't know. Yeah, you may be talking about other people that are
It's
listeners or
generally
something,
not
but
a well-regarded movie, but John, have you seen the Country
I
Bears
liked
movie?
it.
No, I have not.
The
I mean,
music
I'm a fan of the Country Bears from way back when I first saw them at Disney World, but did not see the movie.
in the movie, the music is modern country, and the music's not great,
Okay.
but the movie itself is fantastic. Christopher Walken
Okay.
is the villain, and he's great. The main protagonist
Yeah.
there is an idiot, which is just highly entertaining. Like,
Excellent.
Yeah,
All right.
and it's Jim Henson effects. They're sort of the same ones from like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the
well,
animatronic
Brian
heads.
Henson, right? So yeah,
Oh yeah, I
Okay.
guess it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
post
yeah, yeah.
and it's probably the last
Okay.
big,
Creature Shop.
like practical movie. Like you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
2002 or three, it's like, oh, it must be digital, and it's not. So
No,
Cool.
no,
All
dude.
right.
I think we all have the tendency to like doing all these podcasts has reminded me. Oh no, like CGI, the even Iron Man in 2008 had like the CGI was for one character. It wasn't just everything was CGI.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
still was further down. Like Phantom Menace was the exception, and most people thought that it didn't look very good,
and then we
including
got to like
myself.
Sky Captain, where everyone was like, no.
Right.
Yeah, that Sky Captain should have been something that I absolutely loved, and it just didn't really work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Then
guess I'm going to go ahead and hit the record here.